Denise, you are ready to go, and I'm going to unmute you here. You ready to go?
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is part one today of creating ePortfolios using Google Sites. I would like to, real quick, have you let me know in the chat pad if you've ever tried to use the Google Sites to create a website. I've got 4 people. I think we got about 5 people here. Is that right?
I think so. I'm just checking now.
Okay.
And everybody, just real quickly, I am Suresh. So if you didn't hear that, if you see comments in the chat pod from Suresh, that's actually me. That's just a mistake with the name. So just FYI. Okay, Denise. Yep. There's about.
Okay. Well, we have 3 people that said yes. Now, if you've ever made with the old Google Classic sites, it has a lot more, in a way, capabilities than the new sites, but I've done one before, and it was not intuitive to me, and it took me a long time. So when the new sites came out, I really like it's very, very simple. You don't get a lot of options, but it's very simple. So I think with the simplicity, teachers could maybe learn it more easily, but especially students could use it more easily for portfolios. Okay, so that's why I decided. I looked into a lot of ePortfolio different ideas. If you've ever used Padlet, you could use Padlet to make one. You could also use a Seesaw. It came out a few years ago. It's great for teacher support. But it's got some weird stuff in it that I get confused when I'm trying to use it. It's also free, though. Another one that you could do if this just seems overwhelming to you is simply do a Google Slides as like a presentation of slides. That's a good place to start if, as a teacher, you don't feel comfortable after we finish these 2 series. You can use other technology tools to make portfolios, but I just thought Google Sites would be a really cool way to do it. I love this because of the digital literacy options for students as well. So you kind of have to meet them where they are as well. If they're very, very beginners, we're going to go to some of the prerequisites that you need for them. Beginner ESL students with no technology experience, I would not probably have them use Google Sites immediately at the beginning of the year. It would take a lot with me to get to the point where they're ready. So you guys are experts probably with e-tech stuff anyway, so you would know that as well. Okay, so we're going to move on. And if you have a question, just please go ahead and put it in the chat pad so we can be interactive. So we're going to talk about the what and why of ePortfolios, ePortfolio types and examples, prerequisite technology skills for your students and really for teachers too. Some ideas for ABE and ESL classes of types or focus of the ePortfolios, and then ePortfolio planning and implementation. I'm not really going to get into how to do a Google site today. That will be in part 2. Okay? Okay, so what is an ePortfolio? Well, you guys probably know what a portfolio is. It's a collection, and a lot of times they call them artifacts, which is kind of a weird word to me. I always say sample work or evidence. It showcases learning over time. Now, when you think about one and the types of evidence, you need to think also about the purpose and the audience. And we'll talk about that a little bit. If you want to use this mostly as a learning or as there's different ways to use a portfolio. But the main thing is that it showcases things that the learner is doing over time. The time is really important. This is not something that you develop in, a short time period at all. What's in a portfolio? You can have different files that could be text, pictures, videos. You can have work samples, like writing samples. I love the idea of, because writing is a process, and I don't know if we teach it as that sometimes in adult ed, but it is a process, and the whole organization to first draft to peer editing to revision to final draft would be just a wonderful use of a portfolio. You could even look, if you've got some math teachers, a lot of math, you get more complex, you need to solve problems and you need to show all of the steps, and you could show how you solve problems like that with different types of problems in a portfolio. Or you could do class presentations. It could be collaborative projects that you could get a video. You would need to upload it to like YouTube video and embed it, things like that, because a lot of times you can't directly put video into most of your websites. But one of the main thing about portfolios is the self-reflection. It's super important. Even for what they call showcase portfolios, you usually students provide something to show how they've grown and learned. It's a really important part, and it's part of 21st century learning skills, is being able to self-reflect and regulate your own learning. Why do you want to use ePortfolios? Well, they're effective to track your learner's development, and it can also teach students how to understand their own processes of learning and learn to assess their own learning and development over time. And I love that Mark said benchmarks, because students, they come in and, okay, they're here, and then we give them a test after 60 hours or 50 or whatever, and sometimes that's a long ways away. But they need to know that they are improving over time. And if we do not let them know, a lot of times they don't see their own progress. They haven't learned how to see it. And by doing a portfolio, it will help you and your students see their progress. I think this is one of the reasons students might quit coming sometimes, is that you just don't feel like they're learning fast enough. They don't see their progress. It also allows them, what's wonderful, you don't have to use technology at all to do a very, very good portfolio. You still can do this, well, unless you're portfolioing some of the digital literacy skills, you actually would have to use some. But, we've used portfolios for, 100 years in education as a form of watching learning or assessing learners. But by doing it in the online environment, it's a real authentic way for them to use and develop digital literacy skills, because they're doing critical thinking, they're doing technology, and they're using academic skills. And that's basically what digital literacy skills are. Also, ePortfolios they can share them with others across time and space. A lot of times the learning portfolios, maybe you don't share with as many people, but a showcase portfolio you might want to share with more. And all of the tools, including Google Sites, have ways really for you to make them shareable or not. And that's very important. Some of your learners do not want to be out on the web on a presence, and some do. Okay, a lot of times you go, and I've looked, some things I've read said there's 2 types of portfolios. Others have 3 types, and others say there's 4 types. But basically, to me, they boil down to 2 major types. One of the major types is called the learning ePortfolio, and the instructor and the students create this together. It documents skills towards specific outcomes. This is something that might typically be created by the teacher, especially if students are not used to doing something like this. You might have a portfolio that you set up for them, and then maybe later in the year they can kind of do another kind of portfolio where they set up things once they know how to do it and they get more creativity. But a lot of times when you're working with new skills with learners, you're doing the digital literacy skills, the reflection skills, the portfolio skills. It's better to provide structure to your students so they know what you're looking for and what they need to do. And then from there, they can move on and maybe do their own type or own style of portfolio. So the teacher usually does provide a framework, and then the students add samples of their work. The student is very important because the student has to evaluate the samples and decide what to put up and reflect on them. So the teacher might assist in that decision, but the students really are the persons in charge on that one. The student reflection on their work and what they have learned should be included. It's always important to have that as part of a learning portfolio. It's mostly used in the classroom. Typically, you don't share these with a lot of people because it may not be perfect, and that's okay. It's a learning portfolio. A lot of times you want to just share it with the teacher and the student. Maybe they want to share it with other students, maybe they don't. With permission, you might be able to show their portfolio online if they want something shown. With permission, they may want peers to edit things that they have if they've done it in like a Google Docs and things like that that are editable. But they're not shared with the whole world typically. The other kind is called the showcase ePortfolio. This is actually what you see a lot more posted publicly online, because this kind of portfolio is at the end. It's just the product at the very end. It took a long time to develop, and the instructor and the students create it together, but you're, oh, well, I have the wrong, as you can see, if you've noticed in our good readers, I put the exact same thing for Showcase ePortfolio, but I'm talking differently. Well, just think of a showcase. I can modify this, Anne Marie, right before when we have this PowerPoint available. I just want to change the wording on the slide. The Showcase ePortfolio often is used at the end of a class to show people what the accomplishment was. For example, a lot of high schools have their students do a portfolio, and at the end of the year they showcase their best work. Or they have their students do something for prospective employers. For example, a lot of people now, employers, are asking for portfolios. They say, oh, if you have a portfolio, they will take it into consideration and look. I will say it depends on the field that you're in. If you're in like government sometimes, I know they won't even allow you to bring in additional information because everything has to be a certain way. But a lot of private businesses, they want you to bring in portfolios of what you can do and what you have done and projects you've been involved with because they are looking for people that have the digital literacy and 21st century skills. So a showcase portfolio could be for college admissions, for example. A lot of colleges accept that and want to see that with students coming in. A lot of employers, and especially in the private sector, would love to see student portfolios to see what they've learned. And there's other people that might want to see it. Now, one of the things that ePortfolios are used for, and I said there's really two. One of the main things, people sometimes say assessment portfolios are a different kind of portfolio, but to me, assessment portfolio is a different kind. It's just a showcase portfolio. At the end of the year, the students create this portfolio, and it is assessed based on what they were supposed to learn. So, of course, they are putting their best work in it. I believe, and if anybody's familiar with the English system of assessment, I've been reading up on them, portfolio is a part of their final grades. They have to have a portfolio, and it's weighted in with all their grades. So they do use it for assessment as like a showcase portfolio of their skills. So a showcase ePortfolio is just showing your best work of whatever it is that you want to show the audience that's interested. It could be your teacher for a grade. It could actually be a program assessment where people are looking on a large scale across the board how students are doing. So it could be large-scale assessment, classroom assessment. It could be for prospective employers. It could be for college admissions. Okay. You do want to put student work on it, but you do want everything to be the best of the best. This particular portfolio would not have signs of learning as it goes on. It's only showing the end product. It's showcasing the best of the best. I have some examples. Those of you, if you've ever used, there is a link that Anne-Marie is going to put in the chat box, okay? But if you have an iPhone that has a recent operating system, they're up to operating system iOS 12 right now, but if you have iOS 11, and I just found this out about, I don't know, 9 months ago, and I was when it first came out, I was like so excited. You can actually use your phone camera to scan QR codes. You don't have to have a QR scanner. You just use your camera. If you have an Android device, you will need a QR scanner, I believe. I don't know if any of the new Android phones do the same thing. But you can, yeah, it's pretty cool. Try it if you have an iPhone right now. And you can get this off the screen, and it tells you the little link on your actual picture in your camera, and you click on it. If not, you can go to the link that Anne-Marie put in there and just click on it. And what I'm going to do now is, I gave everybody a chance to do that. I'm going to go to the actual page, but I do think I need a yes from everyone that you've gotten there before I move on. I want to be sure everybody's there.
Okay, everybody, just here comes the host here, Anne-Marie, for a minute. Just remember, if you click on the link, you'll go to another web page on your computer, but don't get lost. Just look down at the bottom of your computer for the little ball, the little blue, white, green little ball that's down on the bottom, and click on that, and then you'll come back into to the webinar room, okay? So let's do what Denise said, and let's go to the link and make sure that you can see it, and then put your hands up once you've gone out and you've looked at it and you're able to get back into the room, because that's what I'm worried about. Okay, Giselle, thank you so much. Go ahead and put your hand down there for me. Thank you for letting me know. And everybody else, let me know. Just remember, follow the bouncy ball to get back into the room.
So I'm going to go ahead and switch over. I just want to be sure everyone have that link to go to. Okay. So I'm going to go share, and I'm going to share my. I've got it up on my computer right now. Okay. So if you got here, you'll see there's ePortfolio. I've got some planning and some examples on this page. We're first going to look at the ePortfolio examples. It's at the top. Now, because the learning, remember I said the learning ePortfolios aren't perfect, and most people are not sharing them with the world. So it's very hard to find an example online. People don't put those online. So the examples you're going to see here are really showcase in nature. They're capstone products from community college, and again, you're not going to. I really didn't find any. I found lots of templates, of high school students, but usually, because of privacy issues, those kind of things are going to be protected, and they may be shared only within the school and with the parents and things like that. So, but you can get a great idea just for looking at some of these community college student ePortfolios. So if you'll notice, if it says site.google.com, it was made with Google Sites. Now this one right here is you'll see it. You can kind of tell the difference. It's made with the classic site. Okay? This one was not made with, the other ones here were not made with Google Sites. A lot of the community colleges also, just so you know, they have templates that the students use and directions, but when you go to community college, you always have learning management systems, so usually the student has to log in and then they get the template and whatever they're going to use. A lot of them are made within their learning management systems. So you can't really see many templates, but we can see some products. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this site right now, and it should open up and you should be able to see it. One of the things I liked about this site, it is a Google Classic site. It's just a course. It's called Spoken Language. So my impression of this person is it's probably an ESL student who's in community college who is needing to take like intensive English, because it says she's joined the English Language Center course of Spoken Language. And, she talks about herself. She introduces herself. And then she has a learning plan. Okay, so here she is. She dates it. Here's her tutor. Here's her objectives and how she's going to try to achieve it. Now, it says tutor's comments. When you use Google Sites or Google anything, you can share it so other people can edit it. So if you and your students are at the point where you're using sharing and collaborating with Google Docs, Google Sites is wonderful because students can actually go in and do comments on their students, on other students' websites, Google Sites or docs that they put in there. If they're not ready for that, at least you as a teacher can go and make comments. And that's a really important and wonderful thing about the digital ePortfolios is the sharing and collaborative nature that is possible, especially with the e-learning. Okay, so here she gives a little bit digital story. This is not super complete, but she did a YouTube video. So that's one thing you'd want to do. I think it's wonderful to put video up, but again, you have to get the video and upload it to YouTube. You cannot put YouTube video directly on the Google Site framework, but you can just embed. It's called embedding. You can embed the video link. I'm not going to play the video because Emery says a lot of times it doesn't work well, but you can see she took a video. She has, remember I talked about reflection? She's supposed to have a reflective report, okay? She doesn't really do a very good job of that, as you could see, okay? So it's kind of an incomplete, but it also lets you know what could be if you worked with this student more. She could be kind of like some of our students that just kind of are gun-ho, and then they kind of leave us, so we have to always be on them. And here's some comments. Now, this was comments where other people, now you cannot do this right now. This was a cool thing about the old Google Classic sites, that you could put you can embed a form. You can embed a form into the new Classics. And this is what she's done here. She has a comment form where you could embed it. So you could do this actually. What you cannot do in the new Google sites that you could do in the other one was you actually could upload. You could have people upload to your Google sites. And right now that's not an option unless they're editors. You can't have just the public do that. And then there's a sitemap, which is something you can or you don't have to do, but you can do. So just kind of let you know on this one. Okay, I'm not going to spend as much time on the other ones, but I want to go back and look at a couple more. This is going to be a very different one we'll look at now. This is not an ESL student, and it's much more complete. This is a capstone. Remember, a lot of community colleges have capstone projects, which I think are great, and high school students are starting to do them too. I don't know if we do them as much in adult ed.
Denise, can you expand on what capstone means exactly?
Yes.
And for everybody else, or yeah.
Well, a capstone project just means it's a big final project that students do. A lot of times it is in what they're studying, like the focus. Like I know for if you're doing website development, because I used to work with some people at ACC, the capstone would be actually you would get matched with a business. The teacher facilitates that, and you design a website for that business. You don't get paid. It's an internship, but you design it for them, and they evaluate it. You evaluate it. So you actually do what you'd be doing in the real world, and that would be your capstone project. A capstone project for other kinds of courses, like if you're studying liberal arts, it could be that you'd have to find something that in the real world liberal arts students do. A lot of times, if they're English, they might do technical writing, or they could be looking to be teachers. They would actually maybe go and develop lesson plans. Whatever, it has to be between the instructor and the students. Something that would show all of the skills together in the real world setting. That's the most important part to me is of the capstone. It's a real world context. And as we know with adult learners, that's the piece we need to put in there. So does anybody have any other comments they want to make on the chat box? And Anne-Marie can read them to us. If you want to go chat, you have to go down to the bottom of your screen and go back to the little chat pod if you want to chat some more comments on that. But anyhow, you can read it's the culmination of what he learned and accomplished. He was studying computer information systems. So you'll notice he has, I'm going to click on here, About Me. So he does give something about himself. It's taken a while to get there. And he does put a picture in. It's not necessary to put pictures in. I am actually made a template for our students to use in adult ed that you might want to use. You don't have to. I did not include pictures because I know there are some of our students that do not want their pictures out there. They can always put their pictures. They can always put About Me, but I'm pretty protective about that kind of stuff with students. But you can always add an About Me. Here's your program abilities. Now look at all the different things he has. Tons of different things that he talks about that he can do, all of his skill sets. This is wonderful for prospective employers. Or if he wants to move on, maybe this is a 2-year degree and he wants to go on to college admissions for a 4-year, or he's moving into a master's program. Here's general education abilities. This is his communication, critical thinking. Let's see, under critical thinking. I mean, this is a huge, remember it's a capstone. This is a major grade. So he talks about the critical thinking, and he talks about, look at here, website planning and strategy documents. So he created these documents, and he shows how he could do critical thinking there. So I'm not going to, anyhow, here's his practicum. So that's just another example of a college level one.
Denise, let me ask this really quick. I realized I've been on mute, and I was trying to ask a question for a while.
Okay.
Anyway, isn't this how you can put sometimes and I've never tried to do this, but I'd be interested for anybody listening to try and let me know. You can take a digital portfolio, and I think you can upload it to your um, LinkedIn account. So if a student wants to experiment with LinkedIn, I think there's a way to upload that onto there, just another way to outreach to employers.
And I think, well, that's the thing about it, is if it's digital and you've shared it publicly, you just need to put the link. I mean, and there it is. It's my digital portfolio, and people can see. So, yeah. LinkedIn is one of the things. I was reading an article that someone wrote, the 5 things that you should always include in a digital portfolio, and one was your LinkedIn information. I don't have it in the sample portfolio for adult ed students, but, you know, especially when you're looking in job networking, it's a great idea. Super, in transitioning and things like that. Any other ideas come in on the chat, Anne-Marie?
No, I just wanted to make sure that you saw,
Okay.
you know, Ashley thought it was a great idea to have students do it. And Mark said that, you know, just on the capstone that it is a final project, and it's a really good point that it's used for music as a final composition. And you know, my only thought about this is when you have the students start creating them, you can kind of put them in groups and have them practice sharing their portfolios with their classmates so they can use their English if it's an ESL class.
You can do presentation, even for our ABE-ASE, to actually go up and present their portfolio, a narrative to the class. The communication skills, speaking and listening, are part of our new ELA content standards. Presenting, communicating, collaborating is very important. It's all in there. So this is a wonderful way to tie into our content standards as well. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to go down now, and I'll just show you a couple of templates. I'm going to go to the high school templates. You'll see the templates for high school are a little bit different because they don't work quite for us, but they could work. I'm going to look at this transition one right now with you. This is, again, one that was used in old Google Sites. It actually has Use Template at the right-hand corner. Unfortunately, you cannot do that with the new Google Sites. There's kind of a workaround. You could develop something in the classic sites, have your students use the template, and then they would have to, basically you can transform it into a new Google Sites. You do have to go back through sometimes and put in your images and things like that, but all the content gets saved. But anyhow, this is I like this because it focuses on transition, and we do work with a lot of students who are trying to transition, whether it's ESL to ABE, ABE-ASE, ASE to post-secondary or training. Now, there's not much in here. It just says welcomed, and they kind of let you set up your own things. This 3060 days since high school to graduation is kind of funny here. I think it's some kind of, I looked at it and I think it changes. So I am not sure what they have. They probably went out and got some kind of HTML code and embedded it there. But anyhow, it just has, it's very basic, but it lets you know, I mean, hey, you can focus on whatever kind of, you can choose as a teacher and your students. If you have students that you've already been working with them, and if they're used to doing teamwork and collaborating with you, and you could design it together rather than just say, okay, we're going to do this framework. It really depends on where you, the teacher, and the students are as far as working together as a team, because that is a skill that's separate. I mean, it can be used on ePortfolios, but it's a different skill. And starting off with students that are not used to doing that might be very uncomfortable if they're not used to that kind of educational setting. I'm thinking a lot of ESL students too. You may find those in the ABE classroom especially younger students, are much more familiar with working with the teacher to design things, but a lot of traditional kind of teaching wasn't like that. So it says, you as a teacher, you decide how you want to approach the ideas that you're going to use. The final thing I want to show you real quick, I'll just show you a template that I made for, that's like it's a Texas Adult and Education Literacy template, and it's focusing with ICA. It would work especially with your ABE students. I know a lot of people nowadays are working with integrating career awareness. Now, you would not have to use, you could change this however you'd like. But I thought this would be, it took me a while to put it together, and I went through, and I'm very familiar with integrating career awareness curriculum. And I put a lot, I didn't put every activity in here, but I put a lot. So this is just a sample, okay? And then with the new sites, as you see, now you're actually seeing the editing version. I'm going to put it on a preview, because since I'm the editor, when I go to that, I automatically can see the editing. So when I preview this, let's see if it'll go and show it to you what it might look like to the student. Do you see this little black, it's kind of an oval shape. It's very, very cool. I don't know, those of you who play with Google Sites may have seen this. The large screen where my pointer is the, like what you would see on a large screen desktop. The tablet is a little bit smaller, and it shows you how it would change if it were on a smaller device, a smaller screen. What's really cool is it is very friendly to mobile devices. So it shows you what this looks like on a mobile device. So you can kind of look through and see what it's going to look like. I just really like this, in your menus right here. So you can see how these really, they scale very well to different screen sizes. So you're missing some of the Google Classic functionality, but you're getting a lot of stuff with new Google Sites as well. As you see this, basically what I divided it up to, ICA, I have the self-exploration, the career exploration, and the career planning. This information at the bottom that I'm kind of scrolling across is not absolutely necessary. It's just visually appealing, because at the top they also can go to these places with the navigation bar. What I did for self-exploration, I divided into, I saw, oh, my values. Now you notice I have a place where they need to go ahead and write the reflection after they've done these different assignments. And here I just uploaded the Word documents of some of the activities that they do. These are actually the Word document uploads. What's one thing that's very important with Google Sites, if you're going to upload files, they need to be on the student's Google Drive. They do not need to be Google Docs or Google Sheets, but they need to be on the student's Google Drive. So that is a prerequisite. But anyhow, so under my interest, I have a link here to the interest profiler. If they clicked on it, they'd go to the website, and then they would come back and they would write their reflection right there. At the bottom, I have my skills. And these are some of the things that they do, some of the lessons that they do. And right here is the reflection. Of course, if you don't want to do all these, you could just, oh, a check and tell on the career, the career check is great. Now, when you go over to career exploration, you have occupational exploration. That's that huge, and I actually put sources in here. I changed this a little bit because it was in Word, and I asked people to put their sources for everything, because I think we need to start getting students not to just put the source at the top. I also told them to use Texas Career Check to get as much information as possible. As you scroll down here, the one thing you've got it, there's multiple scroll bars. And that's one thing I have as one of the prerequisite skills. They got to be good with their mouse skills. Here's labor market information. I didn't say where to go for that. They can usually get that from the Texas Career Check site as well. They can get more detailed information by going into what's called Tracer, but I didn't go into that here. You can always add that. And here's that information interview log, which I think is a wonderful activity, because there's information you're never going to get on a website, or from statistics that you could get from an actual person who works in the field. So those things are there, and all the reflections. Finally, when they go over to career planning, I divided it into 3. You see the drop down? Thinking skills, managing money, and college knowledge. The thinking skills, I put problem solving and decision making there. I also had study strategies and be a smart consumer. And then managing money, if you've ever used ICA, all of your financial literacy could be with the ICA. It has a lot, and just many, many activities where they do daily diaries, income, and we talked about Texas Career Check. Well, here's the Texas Reality Check, where they can go on and, I just clicked on it by accident. If you've never been there, it's really a nice thing to do with your students. They calculate how much they want, what kind of lifestyle do they want, and how much they'd have to make. So, but that just links right there. So you see how I could embed text. You can embed just so many things, and the little websites embed so nicely there. Finally, I have their the training and education. They call them the iTech plans that are required. Now, this you might want to use an iTech plan that your program uses, or if you use the one that's with this curriculum, you might want to name it something else to not confuse it. But it's very nice. I'm right here on the reflection, and as a reminder to the teacher too, if you convert this to a Google Doc, it's a Word document, if you converted this to a Google Doc, wouldn't this be a wonderful way to update their plan throughout the year? Think about that. This is one of the hardest things that we had when I was running a program, is that we were always making copies of this to put in their administrative folder, because it changed from the beginning to the end, and they had to revise it, and we had to write the date and all that stuff, and it was a lot of paper back and forth, and a lot of things got missing. This would be so nice if they could have it in Google Doc format, and it would always appear the most updated version right here. So they could have the original one that they did in their administrative folder, and at the end of the year, if they finish the year with you, you'd have it here for them, and they've already got it updated. So I really love the idea of using these Google Docs instead of actual Word documents, because then things could change. If you're doing revision, think about this. If you have a Google Docs and that's your essay that you're working on, then you would see it every time you updated your draft. And let's say you use, it would show the most updated version. So it's just how you would, sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you'd want to show each separate document. But just think about how you could incorporate your Google Docs files into this. We did a schedule, the website for Austin ISD with our schedules. What I ended up doing was doing the scheduling on a spreadsheet. So when I would update the spreadsheet, it would show up updated, the most recent version on the website. You also can embed calendars, by the way, in here. You can embed calendars as well as videos and websites. That makes it really nice to keep things current. Anyhow, so I wanted to show you that. I think there's many other ideas you could use this for, but that was just one that I thought would work. So I'm going to go back now to the, I got my stop sharing, here we go. I'm going to go back now to the prerequisite mouse and skills. You're really going to need mouse and keyboard skills. They're going to have to select boundaries of text boxes and images. They're going to have to know how to resize and drag and drop. I really analyze this. They're going to have to use drop-down menus to select options. They're going to have to use multiple scroll bars because they have to scroll up and down entire web pages, but then they also have these windows or boxes inside that can scroll. So they're going to have to know that you can use 2 scroll bars that are vertical. And they need, for keyboarding skills, it's not that much. They just need to use caps so they can create capital letters and symbols. But they're going to have really good mouse skills before you want to get them on this, or your students will feel frustrated. So work with mouse skills with them and give them plenty of time to practice and plenty of time to add information to their portfolios because they will be learning these mouse skills. I'm trying to go to the next page with this little tiny arrow. Okay. Computer, internet, and Google skills. They need to know how to navigate to, save to, retrieve documents from, and create folders. That's a big deal, but anything you do on computers, you got to know where things are. You got to know how to organize them, right? They also need to know if it's on the computer or if it's on a USB drive, or in some schools have an external drive that students use. They need to know how to get there. They need to know how to get back and forth from there. They need to access Google Sites. They've got to be able to go to Google Sites, so they need to know how to do a web search for Google Sites or how to type in an internet URL. Most of your students will be able to do that. Big one right here. They have to have and they have to be able to use a free Google or Gmail account. If they already have a Gmail account, they don't need a Google account. But if they just want to set up an account without getting email, they do something called a Google account, and it will work just fine. It just doesn't do the email. I actually, it might do. I don't know. I've never gotten a Google account. Maybe it does, but I know the Gmail account does. But I believe because of the advantages that you have with the Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Emails, etc., I believe that even though people worry about privacy and all that, I think it's definitely worthwhile to set your students up on this platform because there's so much. The world just opens up when it comes to collaboration and free collaboration when you use Google products. Okay? These are not necessary, okay, because you can teach this as you're teaching it. But at some point, you want them to be able to access the Google Drive, navigate, and create new folders. This could be part of what you're teaching them as you teach them Google Sites. They're going to need to upload documents to the Google Drive once you get into the Google Drive. So you want to teach them these things. Sometimes people do things, what's called on-demand teaching, is when you need it, you teach it. And sometimes that's helpful because people use it in context. But you will need to teach these things as they set up their Google site. They need to, then if they can create Google Docs, slides, sheets, and they can share them. Those are skills that they will need as they work on a Google site, but you could teach them as you go along. I think of all the skills, I have to really emphasize the math skills. That's the one that students will probably have the most issues with. We're going to spend a little time. We don't have much time left. Oh, my goodness. Brainstorming ESL portfolios. Any other ideas for that?
And if anyone would like to unmute and share their ideas, we welcome that too. It's always good to hear another voice and hear your collaboration. So raise your hand if you want us to unmute your phone, or you can type your ideas in the chat pod.
Any other ideas? And I have some ideas on the next slide, but I want to see if you have some ideas that I didn't think of. Transitions training, yeah, excellent.
Juanine, yes. This is what we wanted you to see. This could be used for ESL for professionals.
Is perfect. Because,
yes.
Yeah.
And then if you did, if you helped them, then your director or your coordinator could share this with the program specialist at TWC. And they're always interested in what you're doing for the integrated education and training. Great idea.
I think the civics IET classes, as well as the ESL for professionals, transitions, these are folks that are going into colleges or work centers where they need these skills. And so you need to be using them and teaching them. And this is a perfect way to combine all of the things your students need to know. Here's some of my ideas, okay, that I just said. Anybody who does ESL might know that there's these things called Career Pathways Worksheets for Ventures. That is an active link when you get I'm not going to go to it right now, but it's an active link, and there's a whole bunch of worksheets for all 6 levels of ESL. There's 8 activities for each level. So you can differentiate your learning. It's a wonderful way to differentiate learning. Another one, you could use the integrated career awareness, self-exploration, career exploration, and planning. How about taking for ESL the major skill areas from our content standards, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Each of those have different kind of what they call, I guess they're not really substandards. I can't remember. They're underneath the main standard, and they're lettered from A to H or I. And you could take some of those and put them in there, and students could show how they're working towards those skills. Or you could just use it for documenting the writing process, which is so difficult for ESL students. For beginning students that really have problems with listening, you could use it just for listening and speaking. So you see how you could focus just on some aspect or on all of it. Okay? Oh, thanks for putting that in.
Oh, you're welcome, Denise. I had a quick idea. On your Google sheet that everybody has access to with the link that you shared in the beginning, could we grab these 3 and add them to that sheet for ventures and integrated career awareness? That way, everybody, you'll have it all in one sheet, and then it'll be available in the PD portal later on. But this way, you'll have the sheet and you'll have the link that you can refer to. So what you want to do is bookmark that link, and I'm going to put it in the chat pod again, the one that Denise shared earlier. Okay.
Yeah, because I can't grab it. Yeah. Okay. I just put one right now, and the first one. I haven't had time to do the others. Okay, but I can do that. Okay. Let me go back to my presentation. Okay. So those are some ideas that I came. There's so many ideas. I just kept. Okay. Now for ABE-ASE, anything different you think you would work with ABE-ASE? You know what you're teaching and your population. How would you want to use a portfolio with them? You know what? I love the idea for career. They could actually do, you have to be careful about how much, you don't want to actually post their resume online for the world to see because it has information, but I love the idea of career, guided towards careers in whatever way, and I love the idea of projects. You could even do, it's not usually used this way, but you could do like a mini ePortfolio project, like just to teach the skills. It's very guided. And after that, you could bring in and have the students work together and the teacher and expand it more once they're more comfortable with it. So I think that's a great way to start with portfolios, collaborative projects, career projects. Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be so cool if you had informational interviews from people that came in, or get people to come into the class and do interviews about their careers. If they agreed to have it just for your classroom, you wouldn't share it to anyone else. That would be so cool. I just think there's so many things you could do with it. Okay? One site and multiple students. Yeah, you could have I think it's a great way to start is with many students working on one site together because they share the skills and it's building teamwork, which again, that collaboration is 21st century. Okay, you can use ICA, the content standards, the writing process. One of the things you could do, anybody who does the IET classes, I thought it would be cool that you could have categories that relate to what they're doing in their college class, in their CTE class. Like if they're doing, CNA or whatever, there's so many that they're doing out there. Whatever that teacher's doing and whatever major projects they have to do or products, you could have an e-portfolio that they do in the adult basic education classroom to support that and where they would post that. So I think that would be a really cool way to use it with the IET. Anyhow, before you start, you're going to decide on the e-portfolio, the technology, your framework. You want to create a template. Now what I did will work with the new Google Sites. And we'll talk about this more next time. You duplicate it for your students, okay? You have to make one for each student. They have to be editor, and then once they all get it, you want to take them off as editors because you don't want them changing your site. But once they have it and they're an editor, they can always duplicate it themselves to a new name, and then they have their own site. And I know that sounds confusing. It's duplicating twice. But with the new Google Sites, there's no way to have a template. Okay, and I just think that's easier than teaching students how to do it from scratch unless your students have really good technology skills. Okay, and please work with your students on their technology skills before you dive into this. Okay, the offline introduction is that you introduce the concept, show them a sample. They need to do their first piece of sample work. Okay, everything can be offline at first. How do they select it? And very important, what do you want to see in a self-reflection? Many of your students don't know what that means. You need to guide them through all of this offline before they get online, okay? Phase 3, you're going to do online. You're going to have to go into Google Sites. How do you create it? Once you get them to duplicate yours, then how do they customize it? They can choose a different image. They can add their picture. How to go to the different pages. How do they select, edit, and delete the little layouts? How can they upload their own files? How do they create and type in those text boxes? How do they share their portfolio with other people? So we're going to work on that in part 2. So come to part 2 if you want to work a little bit on this. A lot of you already know, I think, but that's great because it takes a while. You're not going to learn everything in 1 hour. Sorry, but anyhow. When will part 2 be disseminated? I wasn't really thinking about it till next week, but you know what I will do, Anne-Marie, on that information sheet. Did everybody, that sheet, that page, that doc that I shared, I will put down the tutorial that I'm going to use next week if you'd like, so you could practice on it on your own. And I'll send you instructions on how to duplicate, for practice, go in and I'm going to invite, if I get everyone's emails, can I do that, Anne-Marie?
Yep. What
Yeah.
I'll do, this is what we'll do is, Denise, okay, so you need everybody's emails.
Yes.
Okay, what about this? If you update the sheet with the tutorials and tell me when, then I will email everybody, blind copy everybody, the link again with the new sheet. Will that work so they have the most updated one? Or do we want to do something different?
The main thing that I want to do for next week is it would be really cool if I can get everyone's emails. I will invite you I'm going to invite them to go and as an editor to work on my site I created, but I'm going to send instructions in the same email of how you can just duplicate it yourself. So next week you'll already have a copy of it if you'd like. And that would be another thing. So we'll do that.
Everybody, let me make sure of this.
You got emails.
And I'm going to use the email that you have in the PD portal, okay? So if you registered in the PD portal, I'm going to grab that email, and that's what I'm going to send to Denise. Is that going to work for everybody? Just give me a hands up or say yes in the chat pod. Okay, yes. Juanine. Okay, Mark. Good. How about everybody else? Is that going to work?
Can I just say one thing? If you have a Gmail, if you have a Gmail, if you have a Gmail that's and you used a different email, like your work email in the PD portal, it's better to use your Gmail. So if you have a Gmail, you can put it in the chat box right now. If it's different than what you registered with, that would be very helpful.
What will be easier so I don't lose it is I'm going to put my email in the in the chat pod right now, and then sometimes, Ashley, I think it would be easier if you did it, not me. I got it. I think Ashley's a typer, faster typer. There you go. Send me, I said Gmail. It needs to be TAMU, see? I can't talk and type at the same time.
It is so much easier if you work with Gmail accounts or Google accounts when you're working in this. It saves a lot of hassle. So if you don't have, I'll send that out too. We can send to your PD portal email addresses all the instructions and asking you to get a Google account or Gmail account, because that's what I want to send you the invitation to. Okay?
Mark, will you do me a favor and send that to me, please, via my TAMU account that I just put in there, just so I don't lose this, because as soon as we go off, this is going to go into post-production, and it's not going to be as easy for me to get it. So can you email that to me at TAMU? It's annemarie.molinari@tamu.edu. That would be awesome. Ashley, same thing. I have your email, though. Never mind. I have Ashley's.
So we got Ashley's. I see Mark. And who? Anybody else not have one? Okay. If you stick it in there, because I'm going to actually copy and paste this right now. So if you have a Gmail and you want me to use it, stick it right now, and I'll copy and paste it too, okay? And I'll send it to Anne-Marie. Any final thoughts? I know we're running late, so we need to go. But Google Sites is pretty cool. It's got a lot of possibilities for you. So we'll go through how to set one up next week, and how to set it up for your students as well, and share it.
Okay, everybody. I want to first of all thank Denise for this amazing webinar. She is phenomenal when it comes to technology, and she does do a lot of technology, just from the very simple to the more advanced. So if you think she would be a session that maybe you'd like to have at your center, have your PD coordinator contact the field specialist at TCall, and possibly that we can work to have Denise come to your site if that's something that you think would work. And she is phenomenal, and I've learned so much today as well. So remember, next week we're going to be back on Friday for part 2 of this. I will find you if you do not register in the PD portal. Okay?
I hope you guys can come. And if not, you can view it, though. That's why I love that it's recorded.
Exactly.
Thanks, everyone. I think, I look forward to seeing everybody, and you will hear from me before next week, okay?
Yep.
You'll get an email, okay?
Okay. And thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay dry and enjoy this weather if you've got good weather. And we'll see you next Friday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.